Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. I'm Olakunle Kasumu. Welcome to the show where we talk to writers, authors, publishers, policymakers, and just about everybody else in the entire book space. We just have a lot of fun as far as books are concerned on this show. We've got a show on our hands today, so please don't go away. So right here in my hand is a book titled My Mother's Daughter, written by Chief Mrs. Taiwo. Remarkable book. It's an autobiography. I love autobiographies, and I've read hundreds of autobiographies in my lifetime. When I talk to young people, I always say to them, read autobiographies. But it's not just about reading autobiographies, it's about whose story the autobiography is about. This is a story of a woman who has done lots of great things in her life, and it's a compelling read. Let me read from page 9. My father, Chief Samuel Olatunbo Osunshonibare, was an astute businessman, widely recognized as being well ahead of his time. He acquired 50 acres of land on what later became Airport Road from Onigbongbo family in 1955. He rightly predicted that its proximity to the proposed airport would make it a gold mine and acquired it for £5,000. Many thought he was mad because at the time, the area was a mere village. So he goes to this place that looks completely like a village, and then he buys up the land because he has seen many years he saw many years ahead. He saw that that land will become very valuable, and it did turn out to become valuable. And these are the kind of things I look out for in autobiographies, and this book is packed with lots of inspiring stories like that. Now, Chief Mrs. Taiwo has done a lot of things in her career. Therefore, she's earned the right to have this book read. I certainly thoroughly enjoyed reading it. Let's get to meet her and then enjoy the conversation we had with her recently.
Chief Mrs. Taiwo is the founding chairman and the current chairman of Atlantic Hall, a co-education non-profit secondary school. She is founding chairman and trustee of Lagos Millennium Group on the environment. In August 2002, she founded the Art of Life Foundation, inspired by the life of her daughter, Abioye Aronke Taiwo, who had tragically passed away 4 months earlier. In 2019, she was awarded an honorary award by the Chartered Institute of Public Resources Management and Politics for her entrepreneurship achievements in Africa. Mrs. Taiwo, nice to have you on Channel's Book Club.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for hosting us.
My pleasure.
The first impression I get from your book, the first thing that strikes me from your book is it's a book about people. Some people say self-made success and all that. Reading this, it's a book about many people who impacted on your life. Even though you dedicated the book to your mother,
Yes.
but characters like your dad, characters like even his own mentors, Lord Thompson, and the way, all the intricacies, the way all of them impacted on you, either directly or indirectly. So going back memory lane, is that what life is all about, really? It's about people, isn't it?
Yes. I think one of the things that I think kind of my standout character is that I'm a very curious person. I mean, always have been. I mean, some people will pass through the neighborhood and they wouldn't even observe what they saw. Some people would go to the same restaurant, every day. After going to one restaurant, I would like to try another one, and another one, and another one. So I think I'm driven by that sheer curiosity and the passion to test and acquire um, so many things in this life. I think it's a tragedy if you live your life only in one dimension, because all of us, not just some of us, it is in all of us to to test our capacity and learn and grow.
Now, let's, for somebody out there who's wondering, okay, what's this book about? My mother's daughter.
Yes,
What's my mother's daughter about? This is the story of your life. This is a
yes,
memoir,
yes.
But if you were to summarize this book, how would you?
Well, as I said a little bit earlier, I started it off thinking I was going to write about my mother. And as I wrote it, dovetailed into my story and my life story. I really didn't want to go too deep into every single thing about my life. So I could have made it a 500-page book, but I didn't want to do that. I still wanted to keep a little bit of some of my, I didn't want to open myself completely. I'm not, what do they call the new uh, girls of today that they're on the internet showing everything they do in the morning now. But I thought that I had a story that was interesting. And as I wrote my mother's story, it dovetailed into my story. But if you read through this book, you will continuously see at the back of it the influence of my mother. I remember many years ago, I had a very close friend, and I told her that, I stop either in the morning on my way to work or in the evening on my way to work to discuss, because my mother was unusual. She handed over the business and she said, "Don't bother me, do it." But we discussed about it every day. So either on my way to work or on my way from work, I would tell her, what the day was like. So this friend of mine said to me, "Taiwo, you don't know what that sounds like. At your age, you have to see mommy every day." I thought to myself, roll your eyes all you want to. You don't know how much I gain from the wisdom I get. And she also was someone that had such a lot of confidence in me that sometimes when I would ask her for advice, she said, "I will solve it yourself. You know, you I mean, you've made all of this happen." So, I mean, and if we did that kind of test, okay, what is the problem? And I would tell her the problem. She said, "What is the solution?" And I'll tell her the solution. Say, "Okay, that is the solution." But so she was very good as a sounding board. And I would say this book, I tried to, my personality comes through. My friends who have read it, they say I write in a very conversational style, and they say they can hear my voice. That it's as if I'm sitting next to them, whether they're in Australia or Canada. And Taiwo, as she always does, is telling one of her stories. So my voice is very clear in the
In the
book.
book? Yes, it is. Now, a lot of people, when they think about their mothers, many times it's from the perspective of, the love a mother shares, and there's a lot of that, in your own story. But I was taken by the role model part, to your mother in your life. I mean, a lot of people talk about their moms being loving, taking care of them, da 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 da, but not many people talk about their mothers the way you have written about your mother here, playing that role of a role model, a mentor,
She, but indeed she was. I mean, uh, my mother was the most fearless person I've ever met. I'm not as fearless as she was. In fact, I used to be frightened for her because she could take on anything, even though she looked so disarmingly
Almost vulnerable.
vulnerable. And I mean, she was very self-effacing. She never pumped herself up. The opposite, but she was the most um, courageous, fearless person, and she kind of pushed that in me, you know. And even sometimes, long she's been dead now for many years, when I've had my vulnerabilities, I can hear her voice say, Taiwo, be my daughter. Go and show your strength. So even then, I hear her voice, very loudly, give me that courage. So,
It's one of the greatest gifts in the
yes,
world, really, to
yes,
have a mother like that, to have a
yes,
parents like that,
yes.
isn't it?
Oh, yes, oh, yes. It's unusual, but if you look at her background too, I mean, her husband died when she was 41, and she had 8 children. She had a big business. There was a lot of bank loans. So she had to fight to make her business work. There were many people that, the husband left a lot of wealth, but, I'm smart enough to know that wealth often is attached to a lot of debt. Oh, I got wise very early, you know. When people see very, very, very wealthy people, and I said, pity them, you don't know how much bank loans they have. That's why you see all the billionaires like we're hearing about Donald Trump. Yeah, he might have 5 billion. Might have 5 billion worth of assets, but his debt might be 7 billion. So I'm deadly aware of that. So I'm not someone that I know that word, all that glitters, is not gold, and I've lived it.
Now, her story, I mean, it's impossible not to see your father's story in her
Yes,
story,
yes,
and it's very prominent in this
yeah,
book. Your father, her husband,
yeah.
died in his early 40s.
44, yeah.
Yeah, and he had accomplished a lot
Incredible amount of.
before he died. So um, how much of an impact did he have on you? I mean, there's a simple answer to that, because he had great impact on her, and
Yes,
she had great impact on you. But
yes.
I would like you to talk a bit
Well,
about that.
I was 13 when my father died. So, to be honest, I did not know him that well because I was 13 and we had been sent to school when I was 10. And, he wasn't coming. There was all the political thing. But I knew him to be a very loving father. He was a very hands on person. I mean, my drama in Reagan and him coming, there's a bit of drama in the book. But he was very loving as a father. He was he had almost the emotions of of a woman. I mean, in him. I mean, he loved his mother with a passion, and he loved his children with a passion too. But he was a very, very, very forward-looking businessman, and generally somebody that saw. And of course, he was a politician, and you got that in my book because I love politics. I studied political science. I was brought up in a political home, and I would get so excited. I talked about it, when 1960, the elections, and all the scurrying around. And I remember to this day the helicopters that would spell "owl" on in the air. And I mean, I remember watching and listening for the results because we were so confident. Our charismatic leader, chief. My father was one of the 7 founders of Action Group.
Yes.
And yes, and we were so confident that we were going to win. I love to talk about politics, but I have no interest. I think that there are other ways that you can change your communities And that's why I have been so passionate about the pressure groups and the social entrepreneur that I have been involved with all my life.
I like the many dimensions of the book. Like the one you just mentioned now, I love political history. So it was nice reading about Action Group. I was like, oh, okay, your father
Yeah,
funded the
yes,
Action Group.
yes, and he was a founding member.
Yes, and the keenness you had, the anxiety, waiting for the results.
Oh my
It just
gosh.
took me back to, back then, and that's very interesting. The way you wrote about politics, about education, about business, about so many other dimensions of life in here. Uh, you were intentional about that, right? What,
Yes.
what were you trying to do?
Well, one of the things I wanted to show was tell my life story, but also I hoped it would motivate people to realize that you shouldn't get stuck in thinking. I mean, I built Elephant House in my 20s, an 18-story office block. Should I, for the rest of my life, say, "Oh, I built Elephant House"? Oh, people get stuck on one thing, and I, all it did was encourage me to take on big, to dare. The most daring of it all, of course, was Lagos Island Millennium Group on the environment, trying to change a whole city. Uh, it taught me that, and it encouraged me to explore every talent that I have, and I wanted to show people that, it's just not good enough to say, oh, I built this and I built that. But, how do you know you're not a budding author?
Do you know you're not?
How do you know that you're not, a budding pianist? I used to play the piano, maybe I take it up again, How do you know? I've been an interior designer. I was telling you how I made furniture in Nigeria, and of course, it meant that I went to have it carved here, spray paint, and I took a whole container to furnish my house in London. I love it. I love the originality of it.
Your involvement in all those things. I mean, there's an age-long born to do it or trained to do it debates. For you, are those in your genes, or are those things you learned from your parents, your mother particularly,
Um,
or somewhere in between there?
I would say that what I'm born to do is is this: when you put your mind that you're going to do something, you have got to do it. That is what is in my genes. And but I don't allow myself, to wallow in it. Just like, the most devastating thing that happened ever in my life when I lost my only daughter, and my first thought was that I would never open my eyes again, and I just could not. I did not see. I didn't want to get over it, but I said to myself, "Be so proud of me that if I could feel her tap me, that mommy, if you don't know what I know, and you to do, that's why I'm so proud of it. I know you'll get up and you'll change the world, And I just remember, like, a couple of weeks before that accident, there had been that bomb blast in the armory, and she had just come back there, and of course, as usual, I got myself involved in trying to do something about it and getting people to go and discover what it was all about. I set up a committee with some people. And my husband said, "Why is it always you that you think you've got to do all of these things?" And I'll never forget what my daughter said. That, "Daddy, if mommy doesn't do it, who else will?" And this was one of her last words to me. And it made me realize that, God wants me to do something about this. And I learned so many times people would come to my house and they said, "Oh, do you know XYZ died on the same spot? That crossroads, there's no fires, there's no traffic light." I said, "But why are we letting them not have traffic lights?" And I put up that traffic lights. And I started it. And by the time you do something that, you actually, because my plan was to put traffic lights all over Lagos. But by the time I did that one, government decided that we have to put traffic lights all over Lagos. And people forget that this was where it started. So that is why I keep repeating, if you want to live in the Nigeria of your dreams, it's not whether you should involve yourself in your community. It's not an option, it's an obligation.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be showing you the concluding part of that interview next week, so you may want to look out for that. Up next is a report on a book launch. The book was written and released by a man who was once a deputy governor, but is now a lawmaker. Enjoy this.
At a recent event in Abuja, Nigeria's federal capital, guests gathered to experience the official launch of Made in Aba, the autobiography of Senator Eyinaya Abaribe. The book chronicles the eventful political journey of Senator Abaribe from his early foray into politics to becoming deputy governor and now a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Made in Aba reflects not only the personal struggles of Abaribe, it captures, even if only in brief, critical aspects of Nigerian history.
Inspired by an early experience in the year 2000 during preparations for his father's burial, when he discovered mementos and documents belonging to his late father that told stories he had no prior knowledge of, Made in Aba is the author's attempt at preserving his own stories for posterity. While providing glimpses into the life of Senator Abaribe, the book also crucially addresses the challenges of nation building and is laced with rich Igbo idioms, interesting anecdotes, and compelling commentaries.
I also tried to capture that there was a Nigeria where it said in our former anthem that though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. What we have done is that we have a big Nigeria that has continually regressed, and now all of us are into our ethnic enclaves. And if you don't go to your ethnic enclave, you won't be able to survive in Nigeria today.
In our country, we are not managing to have rational public conversation. We just trade insults. And this has not enabled us to articulate a path forward for our country.
The event was an opportunity for conversations among the attendees, touching on issues ranging from the challenges of public conversations to insecurity and the government's response to the problems.
We just throw words at each other and completely miss the issues that should affect the nation.
Everybody psychologically has gone back to his village. You're either Fulani or Hausa or Igbo and whatever it is. I think the government needs to do something major to get a handle on this situation. The strategy of silence in the face of outrageous, indescribable crimes cannot work.
It's unacceptable. The best thing for you is to start creating jobs. And creating jobs is to support small businesses, support those who are doing nothing. You know what you're doing by paying ransom? It's the same thing that we're doing in government. People are making money without being productive. So you're actually creating an anarchy.
There are no easy solutions to the challenges troubling Nigeria, but for some of these attendees, honest and frank discussions devoid of ethnic sentiments would be a good place to start.
This is where we have to end the show today. As always, we'll be delighted to get your feedback through any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.